What is up, you guys? I'm Charmx. Today I'm going to be reacting to Film Theory, How One Man Broke Jeopardy. Jeopardy is Rigged Part 1 by the Film Theorist. This is going to be very interesting to me. But yeah, I hope you guys like this. The original link's in the description. Make sure you guys go subscribe to the Film Theorist. Without any further ado, let's begin.
The category for Final Jeopardy today is needless analysis of classic game shows. Here's the clue. Jeopardy champ James Holtzauer won 32 matches and broke the game of Jeopardy using this secret method. Wait, he had a strategy? I thought he was just a robot.
Yeah, I'm really interested to find out how he did it, because I don't know.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to
Film Theory!
A show that gives you your daily double of pop culture and incisive research. Most of the time on Film Theory, I cover movies and shows that really capture the imagination. Marvel superheroes, Disney's dark side, internet creepypastas. But today, I'm going back to my roots. That's right, I'm talking about game shows. For really the first time since I tried it like 8 years ago on a
I don't ever remember Matt talking about game shows.
One-off episode of Game Theory where I'm like, here, let's talk about these games in this game show. And everyone was like, these aren't video games. And I'm like, yeah, but they're games in
I'll look at the backward what words being spelled. That's
game
funny.
show format. Actually, probably more useful because I can teach you how to win tens of thousands of dollars on like The Price is Right. And everyone's like, no.
Okay, Matt, I hope you are watching this reaction, or you or someone from your staff. But someone get to Matt and tell them to do this. There have been people, and I want to know how to do this. There have been people who have managed, they're like math professors or something, and they've managed to win the lottery like multiple times in a row. And they did it based on a secret like formula or something like that. Figure out how they did it so I can replicate it. Yeah, apparently there have been people who are smart enough to figure out how to buy winning tickets or something. And I don't know if it's like the lotto, like the big lotto, or if it's like just the scratch tickets. But I know people have won it like multiple times doing this way. And I want to know how they're doing it. I want to know how they're doing it.
Oh, that sucks. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess I don't get to talk about that thing that I really like to talk about. So bottle it up inside, Pat. Bottle it up inside. Until today, and in a part 2 episode that will undoubtedly underperform on this channel. But you know what? I just thought it was really interesting.
Most videos in parts will always do worse than the first video. Does that make sense? Most of the time. I remember if I ever do gaming videos, like I won't be doing any more in the future because Copa. But you know, when I would do gaming videos in the past, the first video you always would do the best, and then people will just lose interest the further you got on. Anyway.
Interesting, because Jeopardy is rigged. Anyway, rant over, back to my pre-scripted intro. Game shows were one of my earliest TV loves. Little Matt Pat spent many a day curled up in front of the glow of Wheel of Fortune, Price is Right especially, and the king of them all, Jeopardy. Now, I know that not many of you watch Jeopardy because, let's face it,
we're not 60.
Many of you are over 75. But Jeopardy is having
boomer noises.
A huge cultural resurgence. I mean, first off,
it's having a cultural research. Well, I mean, Netflix picked it up, yes. Do you mean because of was Alex Trebek having this cancer and that kind of making it more popular?
Netflix just picked up like every episode of Jeopardy ever created because people were just really excited to watch Jeopardy on Netflix for some reason. But also, and more importantly, because NBC's 7 p.m. Grandma Bait has been playing out like a telenovela of the game show.
Alright, I was totally off. I was thinking it was because of, I believe Alex Trebek has prostate cancer. And I was thinking because, you know, him being in the news and whatnot would make more people start talking about Jeopardy again, but I guess I was wrong.
World over the past year. Picture this. Professional sports bettor James comes onto Jeopardy for the first time on April 4th, 2019. No one knows that he's taken a full year off to study and prepare for these games.
He's looking at a year? Wow.
Comes in, completely upends how the entire game of Jeopardy is played, and wins over the audiences with his bold and weirdly charming yet robotic social awkwardness. He goes on to win 32 games in a row, and even Alex Trebek feels badly for people who have to play against him. He breaks every Jeopardy high score record known to mankind since the show began in 1964, single-handedly redefining what it meant.
What I assume he did over the course of the year, obviously he did something similar to this, but he analyzed like every single I would assume, every single game. And then he would write down how it went and whatnot. And then eventually, after keep doing it over and over, he would find a pattern. And that would kind of, and then he himself, when he got into the show, he would use that pattern to his advantage, and that would help him win. That's what I assume he did. Am I right or wrong? Who knows?
Meant to win big on a TV game show with a total payout of $2,462,216. Who wants to be a millionaire? Eat your heart out. He wanted to be a millionaire twice over and did it. He accomplishes this massive total by averaging, get this, $76,944 of winning every single game. The previous single-day scoring record for a game of Jeopardy was $77,000. A record that James himself broke 16 times during the course of his run. But just as he's one game away from breaking that all-time earnings record of Jeopardy, taking over the crown held by the famous Ken Jennings himself, who did it in over 70 games, he is suddenly
Wait, someone beat him?
Unceremoniously sniped by a research librarian. The story leaves us with two main questions. One, how the heck did James manage to reinvent Jeopardy, a game show that's been running for the better part of a century? And two, was he really defeated? Or did NBC rig the game to make sure that he was kicked off before he basically bankrupted the show?
Oh! That's probably what happened. That makes a lot of sense. Because he had obviously found out how the game worked. Maybe the people behind changed how it worked so that, because maybe they figured out that he knew how things were going. So maybe the people behind the scenes just changed how it worked. That way it would kind of stir things up.
Oh. Did James just have a lucky run with an unlucky...
Who the freak's calling? Alright, I'm back.
Ending? Or was there a lot more going on here behind the scenes than all the Jeopardy viewers could see through their heavily bifocal lenses? Get ready, my friends, because at the end of this two-part series, we might just have exposed the greatest conspiracy to ever happen in game show history.
First off, obviously I haven't finished the series or anything. Matt's probably right. But what I think probably happened is that the people found, or that the people behind the scenes discovered that he knew how things were working, and then they just changed how things worked. Therefore, it would trip him up, and then he would eventually lose, right? That's probably what happened.
Final Jeopardy, indeed. Let's talk about James's strategy first. There's been a lot of Jeopardy contestants over the years, and if you've watched the show, you know that 99% of players play in a very low-risk way. As a refresher, on Jeopardy, you have 5 trivia categories with 5 questions each, and the questions get harder as you go down each column. You pick which category and dollar amount that you want to go for. Get the question right, get the money, choose again, get it wrong, and lose the money. Because losing money is an option in this game, most players tend to bet pretty conservatively at first, testing out the category by picking the easy, low-value questions first.
Yes, it makes sense.
Except for James. He was one of the first players ever to take the completely opposite approach. First, he almost always started at the highest valued clues way down at the bottom of the
Now, why would he do that? Why would he do that?
board, and then he would move his way up to the smaller numbers. This allowed
What, just to get more money? But like...
him to get ahead fast very early on, not only racking up his own score, but also keeping the other players from catching up because all the high-value questions were already taken. Next, he also jumped from category to category. Now, most people will find a category that they're comfortable with and then try to run through all the questions in it. This makes sense because instead of switching from one topic to the next, you can think all the way through a category and hopefully answer all the questions right. But rather than let his opponents get into a groove on a specific topic, James forced them to jump from pop music to European history to rhyme time, a method that seemed to work for him but often discombobulated his opponents.
See, that's smart. So far, nothing there doesn't make any sense how it could be cheating. It's just him being a really smart person.
James has said in interviews that he used children's books to study facts about everything from pop culture to geography, practiced quizzing himself across a huge range of subjects, giving himself the flexibility to hop from category to category, while his opponents were still trying to remember that European cap.
Oh, wait. So he didn't even rig anything. James didn't even rig anything. That's what it seems like. I thought that he had rigged it, or he had figured out how Jeopardy worked and was kind of using how it worked to his advantage. But it looks more like he was just a really smart person who kind of just did things backwards in order to get himself ahead. So, wait, whoa now! Hold now. So Matt's whole argument is that Jeopardy, like the actual Jeopardy rigged it against him because they just didn't want him to win anymore. That's what it seems like. Which, I mean, Matt mentioned that, but I was thinking that this guy, James, was like just using how Jeopardy worked. Like he had discovered something and he was using that to make his decisions, not actually just being smart.
Capital city from 2 questions ago. The strategy that he's exploiting in this case is a function of the brain called task switching, which is the brain's ability to switch attention from one thing to another. It's well documented in psychology research that when people do the same task over and over and over and over again, their speed will increase and their errors will decrease. Make them shift back and forth and they suddenly get both slower and worse at the tasks. Taking this and applying it to Jeopardy, if there's only 2 categories like ends in Asian and British monarchs, it's both easier and faster for your brain to figure out each additional answer when you stick in the same category. You're in the groove or on a roll. But James, of course,
what was that animation?
didn't do that. By constantly moving around the board, he triggered in his opponents what's called a switch cost, which in this case is the
It makes sense how he could wipe them out that way. He must have been really smart. He must have been really freaking smart to do that.
additional time and effort it takes the brain to process
What was he, like a professional gambler or something?
information when there has been a switch of some form. So James, whose entire training was all about switching topics very quickly, was much more adept and able to do this on the fly. But his opponents, who weren't trained to that gameplay style, were left holding the bag. They were left at a disadvantage and tripping over their own feet. So already James is not only playing the statistics of Jeopardy by choosing high-value items at the bottom of the board, but he's also playing the metagame of Jeopardy by playing the other players, using the human brain's built-in.
This guy's a very smart person. I think he was a gambler, right? Something like that. I forget what his career is, but yeah, it obviously helped him a lot with this. Now, did he do this intentionally? Like, did he intentionally know what he was doing? Like, he must have known what he was doing. He seems like a smart person.
Weaknesses against his opponents. On top of all of that, whether it was intentional or not, James didn't just jump around. He looked like he was trying to do it as fast as possible. Before Alex Trebek was even done telling James his last answer was right, he usually had lined up what clue he was choosing next, and he'd spit it out as fast as possible. One example from game 23 of James's run, after getting a question right, James called out his next choice as Sports 8 instead of the real name of the category. Let's go to that sports thing for 800. Maybe James just didn't want to say a category name as goofy as let's go to that sports thing for 800, but a much likelier explanation is that he's just trying to use a breakneck pace against his opponents. He's switching, and he's switching quickly. Using this sort of strategy from the very first question, James was in the lead by over $8,000 on average after the first round.
Whoa! That's crazy. I wonder if did he actually get the money? Did he actually get paid out? I bet they gave him a check and they were like really angry about it. Like they did it really passive aggressively.
All those things combined make that player a force to be reckoned with. But James wasn't content with just that. He had one more card up his sleeve, a trump card that made him unbeatable. He bet what seemed like reckless amounts on all his daily doubles. He bet way larger amounts than almost anyone in the history of the show, so that when he'd get a daily double right, his score would double, putting him so far in the lead that it was literally impossible for any contestant to catch up with just the remaining dollar amounts on the board. Now here, James was also playing with an advantage. He stated that because of his job as a sports bettor,
Sports bettor. Okay. I thought he was like a card player for some reason, like a gambler. I'm like, well, sports betting is still gambling, but
really someone who is paid to place smart bets on sporting events and players, he's used to gambling with huge amounts of money. He said that for him, seeing a $60,000 wager doesn't faze him because he's become desensitized to numbers that large.
This guy, how much is his net worth? $60,000 just gambling, that seems nothing to him? He must make a ton of money.
For most of us, we'd look at that number and see it as a down payment on a house or 60,000 single hamburgers at McDonald's. Just something that's way too precious to bet away on
a lot of clogged arteries.
Whim. So he was the only one willing to make bets that big because he was psychologically primed to do it. Luckily for him, though, that strategy doesn't just work psychologically, it also works out mathematically. Over James's 32 wins, he got to answer 75 of the 96 daily doubles, and he answered them correctly at a 94.7% accuracy.
Whoa.
Almost never missed them. So frankly for him, there was much less risk to betting big. Odds were that no matter how how much he wagered, he'd get the answer right. But even when James did miss the answer, the rest of his statistics indicated that he would be able to make a comeback. James was the first to buzz in to answer.
Now, okay, I have a question. Now, since Matt is making this video and other people, like, this already has 1.3 million views. That's a lot of views. Other people who might play Jeopardy in the future are probably going to watch this, right? Because they're going to be interested, they're going to want to figure out how the best way to play is. Now that Matt has disclosed how this guy played, will other people use the same technique and try to use that to give them advantage? Because if it worked for this guy, maybe it'll work for other people, right? And it'll be interesting to see if this way that this guy played, do you think it'll actually change up the entire way Jeopardy is played from now on? That's what I think it might. I don't know. It all depends how many people watch this video, but I think it definitely could have that effect.
58.3% of the time, which is pretty darn impressive when you consider that the other 41.7% was split amongst 2 other opponents. So on average, he was getting to answer more than double the number of questions of his other 2 opponents. And when James buzzed in, he wasn't likely to miss. His overall accuracy rate over the course of the run was a mind-boggling 97%. It can be hard to contextualize just how crazy that correct answer rate is, but remember when I mentioned Ken Jennings earlier, who won 74 consecutive Jeopardy games? He is the most famous game show player in history.
Until now. How much money did this guy win compared to the new guy?
His accuracy rate was 91.7%, meaning that he missed questions about 3 times as often as James did. That's insane. Imagine.
Is James just that smart of a person? Like, he must be, like, extremely smart. Because I initially thought that James over here was cheating, like not actually using intelligence, but using like just kind of found out how the system worked and was using that to his advantage. Which I guess in a way he did, but he's actually using his intelligence. He seems like an extremely smart person.
Greatest player in any sport or game or other quantifiable contest, whether that's Muhammad Ali in boxing or Serena Williams in tennis or Grand Pooh Bear in video game speed running. Now imagine someone else coming along and making 1/3 of the mistakes of the person considered to be the best of all time. That is crazy. Sure, it's just a difference of 91% to 97%, but that is a huge difference there. James just comes in and crushes the game with a level of knowledge that no one has ever seen before. But to sum up what that insane act...
I wonder what his IQ is. He must be big brain time.
accuracy and buzz rate means in the context of a Jeopardy game, if James made a big bet on a daily double early on in the game and lost everything, based on his statistics, he was going to answer about 6 of the next 10 clues correctly, whereas his opponents would only get 1 or 2 apiece. People who watched James knew that when he got a lead, he tended to keep it and expand it aggressively. But the data would also suggest that in the rare instances when he was coming from behind, he could make up a deficit quickly. So you can see how all the pieces of his strategy.
I wonder if James has like, it's like, frick, I gotta piss! What's that ability some people have where it's like, if they see something, they can always recall it? It's like photogenic memory or something. But like, if he has that ability, all he has to do is really just look at like a piece of paper or something like that. And then in the actual show, he could just answer it just through his head so easily.
Strategy work together to make him a crazy difficult player to beat 32 times in a row. And that sort of record leads to James's biggest edge of all, intimidation. While he didn't step into his very first game with the reputation of being a Jeopardy wizard, it didn't take long for James's reputation as a high-scoring, big-brained, buzzer-swinging outlaw to be established. And part of the reason for that is that Jeopardy filmed several episodes in a day, meaning that the players that James would face on Friday got to watch him annihilate the poor saps from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday before diving into the deep end with him. And even when those players put up a fight, it didn't seem to make that big of a difference. Take it from Marshall Shelburne, who described playing against James like this, quote, "My main emotion during the game was frustration. There were many times where I felt like I timed it just right, hit it right on the lights, and every single time he was one step ahead of me," end quote. Now, I'm not accused.
The guy must be like next level genius or something. I mean, like, how else can you answer that accurate all the time? His brain must be like super brain. Megamind.
accusing any of James's opponents of intentionally giving up, but behavioral psychology would suggest that they were probably inclined to, and subliminally to some extent they might have been. The theory of learned helplessness says that when we experience repeated negative stimuli, such as getting beaten on the buzzer for the 12th time in a row, we eventually just accept our own powerlessness in the situation, and we stop attempting to avoid whatever negative stimulus that is. A rat trapped in a box where the floor is electrified every once in a while and has nowhere to escape, he just gives into it and he's like, well, guess I'm getting electrified this time. So
Yeah, it makes sense. I guess that's also the same with just life in general, you know? If you go, like, starting businesses or something like that, if you start a business and it fails, and you do it again and it fails, and then do it again and it fails, you know, eventually you're just gonna be like, alright, I'm freaking done. But, the key to success, I would say, is, I said this a couple days ago, it's like throwing darts at a dartboard where you're gonna miss a lot, but eventually you'll hit the bullseye if you keep at it, right? So you always gotta keep at it, no matter how much you want to quit.
sucks. Actually, it's a really sad thing for the mice. Same thing in a game of Jeopardy. The TLDR here is when you get smacked around in a game of Jeopardy for long enough and you see it happen to other people, you stop putting up that much of a fight. None of these things individually is gonna guarantee a win. At best, betting big and switching categories and answering faster gives players small edges, but that's the thing about James. As a professional gambler, it's his job to recognize and exploit small edges. He knows that betting on a team that'll win 55% of the time is vastly superior to betting on a team that'll win 52% of the time, and that this edge will be magnified the more repetitions there are. And James kept repeating and repeating and repeating. So with all of this,
he has to be one of the smartest people Jeopardy's ever had, I think. Like, just everything he did, it seems like he really knew what he was doing. And the fact that he was also just really smart. Like, how could you... He must have, like, photogenic memory or something. That's because he got, like, what... His accuracy's so accurate. Like, how can any human remember... How can any human remember all of that? Like, it makes no sense. That's why it has to be that his mind is really superior. Because even if other people use the same techniques, sure, it might give them a little bit of an advantage, but... I think a big thing is his brain power has to be taken into consideration.
this in mind, with the odds literally in James's favor and a massive winning streak under his belt and a massive amount of money in his pocket and a massive amount of knowledge in his brainy head of his, how did he lose? Did someone just get lucky? Or, as many on the internet have suggested, did something fishy happen? James lives and works as a gambler in Vegas, and if there's one thing that happens in Vegas, it's that the house always wins. When you hit too many jackpots or win
Yeah, when you get too lucky, they kick you out.
too many hands of blackjack at a casino, the only thing you can count on is a tap on the shoulder that's gonna tell you you've played enough and it's time for you to take your betting somewhere else. The casino, or in our case, NBC, isn't in the game to lose money. And in the next episode, we'll be talking about all the ways they tried to intentionally oust James from the game. So don't touch that dial. Go grab your fix-it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think they did. I think they, 100%, I think they kicked him out, basically, you know? It makes 100% sense that they would. I mean, they're losing so much money to him. The guy's next level smart. So I 100% believe that he lost due to some rigging.
And your gold bond medicated powder and join us for part 2 of this theory where all questions will be answered.
Anyway, I hope you guys like this video. I really like this. I can't wait to find out how NBC kicked him off or rigged it against him. I mean, the guy must be like super brained or something. You know, his IQ must be so high. Because as I said, if other people try his technique, sure, it'll give them a little bit of advantage if they're smart. But he was so smart, it didn't really matter where he would go, right? He was so smart that he knew it didn't really matter what he chose, what question was chosen, he was most likely going to get it right, so it didn't matter. But whatever. Anyway, I hope you guys like this. I can't wait to find out how NBC screwed him. But yeah, if you guys like this, make sure you give it a thumbs up. I think I'd rate this theory. So far, I mean, the theory's not over, so I'd rate this maybe at like a 6, because the theory's not over. But yeah, make sure you guys go subscribe to The Film Theorist, and with that being said, I'll see you guys next time. Boop!